Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I find it incredibly disturbing that my colleague would question the validity of the witnesses that we have before us today. We have a PhD, we have an author and editor-in-chief of a very well-known online publication. We have a Global Research Center executive who was also Special Assistant to President Bush. So to question the validity of the witnesses is incredibly disturbing to me. Ms. Hemingway, you wanted to respond to Ms. Sewell's comments earlier, and I'd like to give you that opportunity now.
Thank you very much. I'm going to leave aside Ms. Sewell's embrace of censorship and attacks on journalism and journalists, because I believe those are self-discrediting. But both she and Ms. Torres either said or insinuated that voting integrity harms minority voting outcomes. That's actually a falsehood. Caring about election integrity is something that you should do, you should just do because it's important that we have free and fair elections that people trust. But as you saw when Georgia and Florida passed mild election integrity reforms in recent years, they actually saw voting participation skyrocket or increase heavily. And so that's just a common lie or falsehood that's said, and I just wanted to correct that.
Thank you for the clarification. I want to also ask, can you talk a little bit about what you think is happening with the 2024 elections? And you know, you referenced that there's money coming in through different avenues. As far as Mr. Alter, you referenced that. But can you talk a little bit about what you think is happening in the 2024 election, Ms. Hemingway or Mr. Wall, either one?
Well, as I said, you have the CTCL's rebranding of itself as the Alliance for Election Integrity, which is attempting to use both regular funds, but especially in-kind contributions and so-called credits that can only be spent at their partner organizations. So you have that. The other big problem you have is the voter registration project, which is a C3 close to here. They also did this kind of thing, except not through election offices, but simply through left-wing get-out-the-vote groups. And again, getting out the vote's a wonderful thing if it's a political party doing it, or if it's a C4 doing it, or a super PAC. It is an outrageous thing if it's charitable dollars from foundations and donor-advised funds being used by 501c3 charities. That is not legal.
Thank you. Ms. Hemingway.
I would just add another thing to have on this committee's radar would be how President Biden, like 2 months after he entered office, signed an executive order calling for each federal agency to kind of get involved in these types of things as well. And that is something, given the nature of our current bureaucracy, the permanent Washington, D.C. class, and something that we had previously kind of, again, wanted to keep separate because political parties are involved in getting out the vote for their particular candidates. And so many abuses can be done when you're using taxpayer dollars in, again, a partisan fashion.
Thank you. In Oklahoma, there was approximately $2.8 million that counties received from Zuckerbucks, according to the Foundation for Government Accountability. But because of that and the questions surrounding how those dollars were being used, House Bill 3046 was passed, which was authored by my former colleague, Mark Lepak, to prohibit private funding of elections. And I think that we now have over 25 states that have enacted some sort of legislation to prevent this. I fully recognize, having been in the state legislature prior to being elected to Congress, that funding for elections is challenging. And we should be looking at how we do that better. But I would also argue that we need to be mindful of essentially giving additional federal dollars to states that I don't think are administering those elections well, and I would use California as one of those examples. Why would I want to fund an election process that I think is broken? States like Florida, during the 2000 election cycle, recognized they had a problem. We all remember the hanging chads situation, but they rectified it. They realized that they wanted to build confidence in their elections. The mail-in balloting process, the drop box process, I think is very flawed. Oklahoma doesn't do that, and I'm very proud of the way that we structure our elections because we know that there's confidence in the outcome. And so while I do think that we should look at funding, I think that we need to be mindful of the process. Dr. Moore, any thoughts there?
Yeah,
Quickly.
You mentioned Florida. When they when they realized they had a problem, they also had to start spending more. So we need to encourage that, okay?
On the states, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
I yield.
Gentlewoman